Hey there, and welcome back. And if you're new, welcome in. So for today's video, I'm pretty much going to be talking about Kazuha since he is currently getting a rerun next to the new character. So honestly, I'm probably going to try to get her if I'm being honest, because I liked her mechanics and her skill specifically. But overall, yeah. So for now, we're going to be talking about Kazuha, several weapons he or technically not likes, but are good with him. And let's just get started. Because for Kazuha, you're mostly going to want to have a lot of elemental mastery, a lot of EM in a sense, which overall is going to be pretty good. Yeah, you can build them with like crit rate, crit ratio. Also, energy recharge is another thing too that you're going to be wanting as well. But first, we'll start with the weapons. When it comes to the weapons, Freedom Swarm is his best in slot when it comes to overall weapons in general. Because there's several 5-star weapons that are nice and all, but honestly, they don't compare to this. And majority of them are like pretty much crit ratio type of weapons, and he honestly doesn't really need that. What he needs most is energy, elemental mastery, because this guy is mostly going to swirl a lot of reactions, and that's where most of his damage comes from. So out of the 5 stars, Freedom Sworn is his best one. Now, for pretty much some light spenders, or technically free to play, but light spenders too category, a good weapon is Iron Sting because you're able to craft it. So with this, it's similar to pretty much the Freedom Sworn. However, it comes short when it comes to the flat damage, or flat attack, I should say, and elemental mastery. But not only that, he's easily able to trigger the pretty much the ability slash passive move, which is dealing elemental damage increases all damage by 12% for 6 seconds, and it could be stacked up to 2 times. So it's, in theory, you could do 24 in 6 seconds, which with this guy, it's really good, especially if you have him like at C1, I believe. But we'll get into constellations later. So Iron Sting is a craftable weapon and is really good. But let's say right now they're currently in the weapon banner, you're trying to go for his main weapon, but you get a lot of Favonius blades. With this, you're going to want to have some crit ratio with him as well, so he can make full use out of this. Because at, I think, R1, I'm not sure how much, but it has like a 70% chance, I believe, or around there. So pretty much with at least, as long as he hits 1 crit hit, he's then able to get 6 additional energy particles, which allows him to then have his ultimate ready, which chances are his ultimates is then going to be triggering the reactions as well. So overall, Favonius is another good choice, and on top of that, it helps with the energy recharge too, which then further boosts the pretty much elemental particles or energy particles to pretty much have his burst ready in time. So Favonius is another great pick as well. Honestly, probably the 3rd best weapon, because currently I have first Freedom, then maybe Iron Sting, or yeah, Sting, and then we got Favonius. But honestly, from time to time, Favonius can most likely pass the Iron Sting, if I'm being honest, especially due to the amount of energy he's able to get. And speaking about energy, another good weapon would be Sacrificial Sword, because with this, it also helps with energy, and I believe the attack is the same. So pretty much the only difference is the passive skill, which would be the damaging an opponent with an elemental skill then has a chance to reset the cooldown, and that chance is an 80% chance, and it can only happen for every 16 seconds. So overall, this is another good one. So let's say you didn't get C1. With this, in a sense, you kind of have C1 in theory. But if you already have C1, you technically are able to spam your skill 3 times back to back, almost. Which overall, it helps a lot when it comes to him triggering his little energy particles as well. Because whenever he uses his skill, he usually has like 3 or 4. And with this one, it's like increased to 10. Which overall, and on top of that, Favonius has a shorter cooldown compared to Sacrificial, but even then, it's to each your own. However, another good one, technically, there's this one, but that's a temporary event ban or event weapon, so I'm not going to recommend it. However, Kazuha also has a unique one. Let's say you're barely starting, you can technically make your way towards the Liyue and talk to one of the vendors, and you could then get the Dark Iron Sword, which also got buffed. Fun fact, by the way, it helps with elemental mastery, so EM, and on top of that, upon triggering, which this is what Kazuha is going to be triggering, by the way, on top of triggering swirls, he's also going to be triggering other elemental reactions, which would be Overload, Superconduct, Electrocharge, Quicken, Aggravate, Hyperbloom, and Electro-Infuse swirls reactions. And the attack is going to be increased by 20% for 12 seconds whenever one of those are triggered. And since Kazuha is usually infusing his own skill slash burst with other pretty much elements, he's always going to be triggering this effect. So honestly, it kind of sucks you can't get more refinements, but then again, they kind of made up for it by giving you a 20% increase. But hopefully later down the line they maybe do that, but I kind of doubt it, so don't hold your breath. So honestly, this is another good weapon that you could probably give this guy. And like I mentioned, it's pretty easy too. You just need to talk with the vendor right over here in Liyue. He's going to be in this stand right here. If not in this one, he's going to be in this one right here. As long as you talk to one of those guys, they'll eventually talk about their little life story and then eventually give you the weapon, saying that they no longer need it. But that is it for the weapons. Now then, when it comes to the artifact set, you usually want to have, like I mentioned, Elemental Mastery in the main stats. Preferably, I would highly recommend the VV set. It's extremely good, boosts animal damage, and on top of that, whenever doing pretty much swirls, it decreases the enemy's pretty much defense, or elemental reaction, I should say. I'm thinking about Starbrow. It pretty much decreases their elemental resistance whenever that element is infused by swirl, which chances are they are. And on top of that, further increases swirl damage by 60% too, which overall is just good damage. However, let's say you don't have a good VB set and you can go with the two piece, which would be Wanderer's Trope, which obviously gives you elemental mastery when it comes to the two-piece set. And another one that would be good would be Gilded Dream, since that one also gives you technically elemental mastery, so you can do a two-piece Gilded and a two-piece Wanderers, and technically another quote-unquote good-ish artifact set would be this one. However, it doesn't make full use of Kazuha's ability, unfortunately. It's good, but even then, I would highly recommend the VV set. And like I mentioned, you want elemental masteries for the main stats, and for the substats you want to have energy recharge, preferably usually the most. Then if you want to make sure he does like some crit ratio damage, for instance, if you have the Favonia sword, you want to have some crit rate and crit damage, which honestly I got pretty lucky when it came to a few of them. So yeah, that's honestly about it. So you can either go a 4-piece VV or a 2-piece Wanderer and a 2-piece Gilded. Now then, for the constellations, C0 is perfectly fine. However, if you do not want C0 or you want to try to get a constellation, there's two good stopping points. One, C1 is extremely good because it decreases the cooldown for his skill, and on top of that, upon using Kazuha's slash, which is his burst, it automatically resets the cooldown for his skill, which then allows you to then use the skill again and get more energy particles. So by the time you're done with your rotation, you'll have his burst ready in theory. Now, another good one would technically be C2, especially since whenever he uses his burst, not only does Kazuha gain 200 elemental mastery, but also whoever's currently on the field will also get elemental mastery. So like I mentioned, currently Yanfei is going to be my main damage dealer for this team comp. So right now she has 145, but when she's in Kazuha's burst, she's then going to have 345. And then I have technically Shinkyu, this guy, little blue sword over here. So whenever You usually want to use his attack first, then swirl with Kazuha to then swirl Hydro. Then you can maybe slap down Benny's to then increase Yanfei's damage. And on top of that, whenever Kazuha's burst is still up, her elemental mastery is going to go up. And then the vape damage is also going to go up too. So honestly, this really helps with a lot. Pretty much a damage potential. And then C3 and C4 obviously, or C3 and C5 will increase his skill and burst by 3 levels. However, C4 technically allows him to, depending on whether you press or hold, will depend on how much energy particles Kazuha is going to be getting from his skill. Also, whenever he's gliding, he passively gets 2 energy per second, which is nice and all, but not really needed. And then lastly, we have his C6, which overall just increases damage across the board when it comes to skill, burst, and technically just also based off his elemental mastery too, which is usually extremely good. Now, for his skills, you usually want to have his, I'm probably gonna say his burst first priority, then his skill, and lastly his normal attack. Honestly, you can just leave it at 5. That's where I'm leaving it as, if I'm being honest. I could technically raise these, but I'm not going to because I'm currently farming for someone else. Sorry, not sorry. Also, first, second, and third priority. Now, for his abilities, so pretty much whenever his skill is in contact with any of these elements, Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, and Electro, it's going to absorb it, and then he's then able to do a plunging attack. And whenever that happens, he's then able to pretty much do additional, he will deal additional 200% attack damage. And on top of that, absorbs the elemental type, so also does damage as technically Animo, and which element he does, that's also the type of damage he's going to be doing. Which overall, however, it could only absorb 1 at a time, so keep that in mind. Lastly, for this last one, every single time when Kazuha causes a swirl reaction, it increases the elemental damage. And it increases by 0.04% from pretty much his elemental damage. So the higher he has, the more damage it does. Which honestly, pretty good. Last one just reduces the stamina used when running. But yeah, honestly, that's about it. Let's just get right into the little damage showcase, if I'm being honest. Prime example. Since I have 2 Pyro characters, I want to go here. You see how it does both Animo and Hydro? However, if there was both Pyro and another element, whichever element Kazuha ends up absorbing first will be the main damage as well. Let's just get right into it. No, here we go. I was supposed to use his skill. Oh well, too late. And I forgot to check again. Oh, he missed? Oh, well, whatever, it's fine. Ooh. Honestly, my rotations could be better. Overall, it's like Kazuha, on top of all his little abilities, this dude can literally just be thrown in any elemental reaction team and he's going to be perfectly fine. Except for Dendro. Dendro's debatable. But any other team, he's pretty much set. But yeah, overall, this dude's like top notch. And on top of that, even like regularly, let's say, you just going, crawling, oh, you're out of energy, you could just, instead of climbing, you could just hold E, boom, you're already up. And it's like, overall, Kazuha is like, he's one of the few characters that I would highly recommend getting. So let's say you're kind of like against the fence. I'd recommend Kazuha more, since overall he's going to be a lot easier to manage as well. And on top of that, let's say when you're exploring too, it's going to be a lot easier too. So yeah, honestly, that's that, if I'm being honest. So if you ended up enjoying this little quick ranting video or slash guide video, just make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Also, let's see if I get anything. I shall let you be, and until next time, later nerds, take care.